Thank you, Zoom. And welcome, everyone. So I'm going to make one last shout out for all who joined later to put your cameras on so that we can see each other in this virtual world and make that visual connect. And I always say that the energy that each one of us brings will ensure that our bandwidth stays perfectly well. So not to worry on that at all. So welcome, 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 and good evening to all of you who I think are primarily from India. And of course, big good morning to you, Peter, who's joining us all the way from Orlando. And thank you, Peter, always for making the time, the space, always there for anything that we want to bring from back to source, and immense gratitude. And thank you for always being rock solid support to me personally and to us professionally. Thank you.
Wow, that helped me wake up. Thank you.
So I would also like to, welcome all prospective coaches or who are looking at coaching, or some of you like Alok already a coach. And I think that, in some way or the other, I feel connected to each one of you, either through an email or a LinkedIn Connect. Some I know more than others, but I do feel connected with each one of you. So thank you all for being here and making the time to log in on time. And I hope, I know that you will benefit from being here and experiencing the magnificent presence of Peter. So what I've done, just a few housekeeping rules. Cameras on to those who feel comfortable keeping their cameras on. One more request. And we'll keep yourselves on mute for the initial session. There are a number of questions that have come in that I will, I've woven together to at least have a nice narrative. And we'll go through that through the session. If something comes up in your mind as you're hearing Peter speak, then please feel free to type it in the chat box. I'm pretty sure we can get to that at some point. If there are some questions that you've been unable to send in, then before Peter starts sharing, if you want to type it into the chat box, please feel free to type that in. We are recording this session, so we will send it out to all those who have not made it here or who've not made it on time here, but we like to honor the time of everyone who's here and just jump in. So before I go further, I just want to, presence and thank my Back to Source team. I'm able to shine right up front here, but thanks to Nidhi, who's away on a silent retreat, Monica, who does all our back-end work, and Priyanka, who's here to support. And I can do all I can do because of you. So thank you very, very much for your presence in my life as well. So with that, I'm going to introduce Peter as I know him, and then I will share, ask Peter to say a little bit about himself. But I think everything that I know about coaching, my introduction to coaching and my love for coaching getting stronger and deeper is thanks to Peter. And he is both my mentor and as I like to call, father figure in world and professional coaching. And I feel so grateful that our paths crossed and the way that they did, and we're able to continue this association year on year. Peter has been one of the pioneers. See, Peter, I've corrected myself this time in coaching. And he's seen the birth of coaching as an industry since it started 26 years ago, and has been one of those people who came together to create it into a formal, somewhat formal kind of, body of ICF and how we see coaching today. So I think that he's played a huge role in organizing the profession of coaching himself. And I also think that he's one of the very first people who started coming to India and bringing this wealth of knowledge of coaching to India 12 years ago. Consistently, he came every year till the pandemic happened. And so he's well versed with India as well and the Indian context. I got trained by Peter in one of his in-person workshops many, many years ago, seems like many years ago, but it was just 2015. And then since then, my life has changed personally and professionally. It was a homecoming, and I'm so delighted to bring Peter to all of you and to continue his work through coach training in India. So over to you, Peter, to say a few words before we jump into the little narrative that I've prepared for today. To you.
Wow, wow, wow. Well, thank you for having me, and thank you for being here, and thank you for being what I call the face of coaching in India, because you really are the spirit of coaching in India. You so embody it, Amrita. Yeah, I'm trying to hold that big head of mine now up with all that praise of, being the person that is responsible for coaching in the world. Yeah, I am one of, like 1,000 different volunteers that have built this profession. And I'm very proud of that too. So yes, I have been around for a long time. I come out of the executive world, corporate world, and also the entrepreneurial world. So I understand and love entrepreneurs. I understand and have great appreciation for those that are in leadership positions and formal organizations, profit or nonprofit, doesn't matter, civic or educational. There's a weight that comes with that responsibility in those positions. And coaching has had and continues to have and will continue to have a huge impact on our organizations of the world. And it's stunning. I mean, it's like, yes, I've been in this for 26 years and it feels like the first day. It feels like the beginning of what the promise of coaching can really bring to the world, one person at a time. So, born here in the United States. I live in Florida, Orlando, Florida, Central Florida, if you're familiar with that geography. One of my passions outside of coaching is woodworking. Just love woodworking. I spend my spare time figuring out how can I get a nice big workshop with nice big machinery. So I've been studying bandsaws and planers and table saws for the last 3 weeks. But they're still very active in the ICF, International Coaching Federation, very active in Coach for Life, very active in India, as Amrita has indicated. Still hands-on involved with part 1 training, part 2 training, and part 3 training, which is our certification training. So, even though many people look at me and say, okay, so he's an elder. I like that, by the way. I like an elder, not old, but an elder. I went to Spirit back probably 3-4 years ago now and say, okay, so my colleagues, my fellow graduates from high school and university days were retiring or retired at that stage. And I said to Spirit, okay, so what's my plan? And the thing that came through for me and for Marcia, who you'll hear about often, my life partner and co-founder of Coach for Life, the message that came through from our Spirit was, yeah, it's time to expand. Really? So that's what I've been doing. I do live streaming from my own video studio that I created and built myself, literally from, scraps of wood and electronics and a lot of YouTube channel watching. I do that every Tuesday morning. So I'm very, very active still in all phases of life. So I'm thrilled to be here. It's always a treat to be with Amrita and Priyanka for Back to Source. And that's probably longer than you bargained for, Amrita, but I'm feeling jazzed this morning.
Thank you, Peter. It's you never get enough of you, so that's perfectly all right. Just to set context is, Peter, that the group of people who are here are, I think, primarily, I'll say, since Vedant's already part of the program, but are primarily people who are looking at coaching as a profession. And I've had some of them have had conversations with me, some not as well in this group, and they're really looking to see whether or not they would like to take that step forward And I like to say whether or not in September, because I know that when the time is right, they will. But really to understand more about coaching and to see whether this is the kind of program that they would like to take forward. And that's really the prime objective of today's open house. And as we speak, we have our last 3 seats for our September cohort, but it's this cohort will get over, and then there will be another cohort, because this is our life's work, and it will continue. So it's like open for all to be able to get a deeper understanding of the work that we do and bring through Coach for Life and Back to Source through the ICF approved coach training program that we offer. So that's really the context. First question, and I've tried to put it together such so that it seems like a nice little story, but we asked them to share some questions. And the first question really came from a person called Shalu Advani. She's not here, but I hope she listens to the recording. And it's a nice way to break into this conversation. And her question is, how does one know that they're meant for coaching? So I'll hand that to you to share your perspective.
Yeah, and thank you for that question. I love that question. My answer to that has been if you're an individual that loves to see other people thrive, if you love to see other people thrive and you support them in being able to do that for your whole lifetime, like back when you were 15 years old and your girlfriends came to you and asked for advice and you wanted the best for them, or a colleague at work at 30 years old, one of your peers perhaps came to you, and you're just kind of like in earlier times we would have called that maybe a mentor, that they would come to you. You're a safe space to share something with that's maybe a little bit vulnerable for them. I think you're predisposed to become a professional coach, and professional coach brings both of those conversations way, way higher, obviously. But do I have the capacity to support someone to go further, even at the expense of my current fiefdom, my current department, my current job, my current vertical, my current function? Just a real quick story. I love to see people thrive. When I was in corporate, I'd have people that report to me, and I would have conversations about what's next for you. What are you passionate about? What do you want to learn? Any assignments that you see going on around you in the organization that you like to be a part of? Those kinds of conversations. And as a result of that, they grew very fast. And then they got noticed very quickly by other departments, other parts of the world, quite literally, and said, hey, you got a guy down in Australia that looks really sharp, bright, good performer. You think he'd be a good candidate to be the country manager up in the UK? And I said, yeah, I think he would. And he became the country manager in the UK. So I lost a really valuable part of my team, but that was superseded by, I wanted to see him thrive. I wanted him to be all that he could be. So I think that's a huge part of it. The second part to be a really great coach is, are you willing to unlearn the strategies that you've been using, in some cases for 20, 30, 40 years, and learn new strategies, new competencies to even support them more? I think that's a second component, and that's becoming very evident in recent years of coaching, where we have lots of people. You go to LinkedIn and I see everybody's a coach now, right? But are they, or are they still consulting? Are they still advising? Are they still teaching and just calling it coaching because it has become very chic, very very popular? So that's, I think, the second most important thing is, are you willing to unlearn some of the strategies? In other words, stop telling people what to do and start listening at a much, much deeper level. So I would say those are the top two, Emery, to that question.
Thank you. Thank you, Peter. And if I may add a third to what Peter said, I'd say that that when you're ready to work on your own self, then I think that that's also a great indicator that you're setting yourself up to be a great coach. Because as much as I've come to experience coaching, as much as you are here to be there for another person, I think that coaching is, in my perspective, the only profession where you get to work on your own self as well. So, and I think that's such a joyous space to be in. So with that, I'm going to ask another very broad, generic, and a really purposeful question. And Gaurav is here. And that's from Gaurav. And his question, even though you've really answered it in bits, but I'll ask it again to see that what is integral to coaching in your perspective, Peter?
Yeah, one of the themes that professional coaches, my colleagues, have been talking about really for the last 3, maybe 4 years, and more so, is the concept of what's the coach's mindset. What's a coach's mindset? So if my mindset is that I'm smarter than you, or I know more about life than you do, then that mindset, when it gets carried over into my coaching, my professional coaching, it's gonna color how I listen. What am I listening for? Well, I'm listening for where they really need my help. So I need to shift that mindset from a place of I know better, or I have more experience, or I have this, that, or the other that they perhaps do not have, to a place of they have within them their own best answer for their life. So that is hugely integral to a professional coach, as becoming a professional coach, to really understand that, to really know that at a deep level, even when they say they don't know. One of the things that I've commonly said recently is that the world is addicted to advice. The world is addicted to advice, both receiving advice, please tell me what to do, boss, and I'll go do it, because I don't want to screw it up. I want to do a good job for you. So tell me what you want to do and how to do it, and I'll go do it. All right. And the advice giving is also part of that addiction worldwide of, I love giving advice. I mean, look at me right now. I love giving advice. So coaching, coming back to the profession of coaching, is not giving advice. It's integral in a sense of make the client do the work. It's one of my favorite sayings in training. Make the client do the work, that they're the only ones that can do it. It is also directly connected to one that's a huge attribute that's been attributed to coaching, and the power of coaching is developing the human being. Now, we develop their role, all right, to become a better CEO. They become a better mom. They become a better author. They become a better parent. They become a better sibling. They become a better citizen of the world, and so on. But what's underneath that role? Who are you as a human being? And to support an individual to go through their own self-development, their own self-mastery, now they can apply that to wherever they go. Day in, day out, from role to role to role, from one stage of life to the next stage of life to the next stage of life. They can use that if and when they've developed themselves. Early on in coaching, I had a fellow that came to me, and I was probably at the time, maybe I'd say late 40s, me, all right? And the guy that I was talking to in coaching was in his early 60s. And I simply asked him, so what do you want? What would best serve you? Those kinds of questions. And he started to cry, literally broke down in front of me and said, I honest to God don't know, Peter. I have always been in a role that other people told me what to do and how to do it. And he was lost, and he knew that he was lost, and he was searching desperately for what I now refer to as his core self, the deep down part of who he has been all his life. He just has ignored it, not developed it, not been in a place where people have asked him those kinds of questions. So those are a couple of things that I think that are really, really integral to the act of being a professional coach, and to be comfortable with their discomfort. I'll say that again. For me as a coach, to be comfortable with their discomfort of not thinking that they know, or not thinking what's next, or not thinking what's best for them in this situation or this stage of life. Because I come from a hugely, hugely compassionate heart. I do. I love people. I love all people. I want the best for everyone that I come in contact with, without judgment, as much as is humanly possible. And yet I know, and it's a classic case or metaphor of the caterpillar that's molting and becoming a butterfly. They have to go through an extraordinary struggle to get out of that cocoon, get out of that shell. Same thing with a young bird. And you all know that analogy, that if I don't allow that to happen in its natural way of their struggle, then I cripple them for life. And it might even be life ending, because they don't have the strength to fly. They don't have the strength to do what's next for their stage of life. Same thing with a human being. So, wow, that sounds very profound. I'll stop there. I am ready to. How was that?
It's always wonderful, Peter. And I know Gitanjali just sent me a message that she needs to drop off. So thank you for being here. And I will share the recording with you. But we'll continue with Yogesh's question. And he's very much here. But let's just continue with his question. And I think it's more specific to coaching in his ask of what are the core behaviors that a budding coach needs to cultivate. So he's just asking for more specificness, as much as I enjoy the esotericness of our coaching practice.
Budding behaviors of a new coach. Be a learner. Be open to learn. And again, as I've talked, there's part of that is to the willingness to unlearn, to let go of an old strategy. If there's one thing that I would narrow it down to is, something that Amrita already referred to, is self-mastery. Have you done your work individually, as a human being, as a person, just all alone in a room and, with nobody else around? Have you done your work in terms of exploring, who am I? Why am I here? What's my contribution to my world? What are some of the things, kind of an area that I've dabbled with over the last, 50 years for that matter, but specifically over the last year, is getting back into, what are my beliefs? Do I believe that people are basically whole and complete, or not? Do I believe that I am a unique human being, one over 700, 7.5 billion, and I am so significantly unique that if I don't do the work that I'm here to do, then nobody else can be able to do that work the same way and for the same people in the same strength, inspiration that I'm here to provide to the world around me. And self-mastery is a continuous thing. It doesn't like, okay, yeah, so from the ages of 45 to 48, I did my self-mastery. Thank you very much. Now I'm dead. At least in my life, it hasn't worked that way. So that's a continuing process and a deeper process. And the more I know about myself, the more areas that I have to work on. And a huge piece of that, by the way, is acceptance and compassion for myself. I'm human. I make mistakes. I mess up. I wish I could have done that differently. I wish I could have had a different conversation a week ago that I had with somebody that hurt them. Yeah, that's not who I want to be. So who do I want to be in situations like that? So specificity, yeah. Take a really long, hard look, deep look into who am I and why am I here? It's actually the center of our work, actually. And it's grounded in spirituality. You don't have to have a spiritual context. You don't have to believe what I believe in terms of spiritual traditions. But I believe that everybody is here for a purpose. I believe that everybody is here to do good. I believe that everybody is innately good at their core. So yeah, I think I'll stop there, Amrita, because that one in and of itself is a lifetime worth of work.
Yeah. Thank you, Peter. There is this other question which Shweta's typed into the chat box, and her question is that, to be a coach, do I necessarily need to also be do I need to have the gift of the gab in her language? Do I need to be able to just like speak really well and eloquently and be able to do all of that? Or is that a skill that is important for a coach to have?
The first question is no, you don't have to have gift of gab. And second of all, no, it's not a coaching competency. In fact, it would be a counter competency, counter evidence to, are you a good listener? Do you allow the client to share most of the time or reflect most of the time? I've listened to literally thousands of actual coaching sessions as part of the certification program that we've been doing for 25 years. And the best, no, I won't even say the best, I'll just say the average. The average coaching session that I listen to is about 30, 35 minutes. And the absolute best coaching that is up at the higher level in the way of ICF, International Coaching Federation, way of assessing those coaching sessions. The coaches may be speaking 5% of the time, max 10, which means the client is doing 95% of the talking, reflecting, ruminating, going deeper down in terms of thought process. So I would say that if you take gift of gab out of that question and put in listening, the answer then would become a resounding yes. You do have to have a gift of listening.
Thank you, Peter. And I'll share a little story of mine. Is that when I came to coaching, I really thought that I'll be like just awesome at this because I'm this great communicator and I can speak so eloquently. And I thought that I did not realize then that communication had two parts to it, speaking and listening. And so what I learned, and I continue to learn, is really that art of listening and deepening that listening and being comfortable with silence. And that's really the work, my work, that I keep doing for myself to continue on this path of coaching mastery. So Shweta, I hope that answers that question for you. And if you have any follow-up or anything that you'd like to ask, please feel free. It's an absolutely safe space. You can unmute yourself and say anything you want. Are you good?
Sure, I think it does answer my question, Peter and Amrita. So thank you so much. I've always had this as a reservation, and I've always thought, and maybe it's more a mental block, where I felt that coaches are usually the ones who inspire you by their speech, by what they have to communicate. So yeah, so thank you for the clarity.
You're welcome. You're welcome. And I think that to add to, you're that piece of inspiration, and that's what I've always shared about Peter, and definitely in some email that you've received from me, is that even if Peter doesn't say a word in the 5-day coaching training program, you will learn so much because you're inspired by his presence. And that's really what I think, although he does speak in the coaching session, just to get that record straight. But that's really, I think, the presence piece really is the inspiration comes from there rather than what you speak. So that's just wanted to add that. I'll stay with Shweta and ask another question. Shweta, do you want to ask yourself, or do you want me to ask that question since you're here?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So, Peter, the second question was, how has coaching really been impacted by the pandemic now that we I think only have the virtual mode to connect with people? What kind of changes have you seen in the coaching space? And for all the budding coaches, maybe we have the liberty to learn it while it's happening. But for all the old coaches, what would your advice be?
The pandemic has actually aided and enforced and encouraged more coaching to be taking place worldwide. They did a study, ICF did a survey or a study back, I think about maybe 3 months ago. And they said that coaching has actually risen because of the COVID. Because there's a lot of people that are asking really deeper questions now. I'm at home and I've been doing work at home. Do I really want to go back to work? Do I want to go back to that workspace? Do I want to go through the hour-and-a-half travel each way to get there? I kind of, as much as I don't like being stuck at home, I love that I've got some quality time now with my kids or my spouse or, my family. So there's been some really positive things that have become or been a result of forced lockdowns. In terms of the power of coaching, specifically in a virtual world, that's always been the case. Coaching, well, I'll say first of all, the U.S. coaching, because I came to India, like Amrita said, about 12 years ago. Over half the coaching in the United States had been being done virtually for the last 20 years. So sometimes just by telephone, right? Sometimes with Skype and the early forms of virtual, connecting. There are some coaches that refuse to do it virtually, that because they said, no, I want to be with that person. I want to see the whole body language. I want to see what they're doing. And, that informs my questioning and informs my knowledge of, are they comfortable with what they've just shared or not? So they said, I have to do it in person. I said, okay, that's fine. There are others of us that have favored way before pandemic days that I did and still do 90% of my coaching virtually. And in most cases, not with visual, even though it's available now. Because if they started catharting, in other words, they needed to cry or they needed to process something, it was less invasive for me to be in their face, quite literally, right? Like I am with you right now, because we didn't have visual. So there are those of us in coaching that have always done it virtually and said there's a strong power and energy that can come through. And if I'm really tuned into the energy of the client, I don't need to see them. Okay. Now, not every coach is going to say that, and every coach training is going to say that, because no, we're all about body and body language and, the interpretation of the micro, reflections that are happening in their eyes or their face or their movement, etc. So what the pandemic has done is forced a lot of people that have been afraid to do things virtually, and they're finding, wow, this is pretty powerful stuff. I'm getting the same kind of results, and the client as well, that, okay, so now I don't have to fly to Calcutta to do my coaching, every 10 days. So I save on an airplane fare, I save on my time, I save on the fuel that's being, adding to the carbon footprint of the world, blah, blah, blah. So I think there's a lot of converts that are coming over to virtual. And particularly now that we have such rock solid technology virtual in almost all cases, it's not a hindrance. So that's what's happening worldwide and globally, that people are becoming A, more comfortable with it, and B, clients that are saying, yeah, I guess it's okay to do it virtual now. You don't have to fly in, and it's gonna, saves the money for the corporations anyhow, so they don't have to pay for all that for the extra time that the coach is traveling. So I think, bottom line, it's been a good thing. Bottom line, it's been a good thing in terms of growing the importance of having someone to A, support you, that's not going to tell you how to deal with the pandemic, right? Because it's going to be coaching instead of advising. And B, the technology of doing it virtual, I think, has been drastically improved in a lot of people's minds around it.
Thank you. Thank you, Peter. Just another quick story on this whole virtual piece is that very recently I received an RFP that I had to fill in, and it was really unique because they asked, how many of your coaching hours have you delivered virtually pre-pandemic and post-pandemic? And how many of your hours have you facilitated in terms of training programs pre-pandemic virtually and post-pandemic? So post-pandemic, it was almost like, everyone, all of us reinvented ourselves into doing that. But just to have that sense of curiosity to know whether you're doing it before as well. So it, as much as hybrid working is here to stay, I think virtual coaching has taken on, and organizations, especially in India, that love that warm body contact and wanting the coach to come in, booking a conference room and all of that, is now they've grown so comfortable with it and seeing that it's equally, if not more effective, to be done and offered virtually. Yeah. And as we're on that virtual piece, Peter, I'm going to get you to also share a little bit in terms of the program that we run and your experience of having run it in person and now doing it virtually in India. This will be our 6th or 7th program that we'll be doing virtually. So your experience of both, and how do you see the way forward?
Yeah, thank you for that. Well, now the tables are turned, aren't they? In terms of, someone that didn't want to do something virtually and could only do it in person. And that's the way that the power of the program was translated. Because I refused with all of my might to do part 1 virtually for, I guess we started getting inquiries to do that probably 15, 18 years ago. I said, no, it has to be in person. Yeah, but I live in Perth, Australia, and it's really hard for me to get to San Diego, where I was earlier, or Florida now. Yeah, I'm sorry. We only do it in person. So that was my experience, and it was an incredibly powerful program. I mean, 99.9% of the people that went through that program, which was thousands of people, came out of that in-person part 1 4-day or 5-day program a changed human being, quite literally in 5 days. Pandemic hits, we have 48 people that have signed up to do a in-person training with me, 24 of them in Mumbai and 24 of them in Delhi in March of 2020. And 1 day before my flight takes off, going through Dubai and coming into Mumbai, Indian government says no more people can come into India unless you're a U.S. citizen, an Indian citizen. So there I am on this half of the planet, and Amrit on the other half of the planet with 24 people that want to get trained. Can't do it. So, what are we gonna do? Well, let's wait. Maybe this will all pass in a couple of months. And then I'll come over. Well, obviously that didn't happen. So we got heads together and said, okay, so how can we do this virtually? It's a grand experiment. I didn't know if it could be as powerful as in person. I just didn't. I wasn't convinced. What I am really great at, I'm a great instructional designer. I am. I can design programs and understand the learning modules and the progression of learning and things being put in place at the day one that will end up being important in day three and all that. I'm spectacularly great at that. So I took those skills and started looking at, okay, so how do we develop a program virtually, Zoom-based, and get at all the things where, we would be standing in lines or holding hands or looking into each other's eyes, face to face, like 2 feet apart from each other, and all of those kinds of things that we used to do in person. And how do we do that virtually? And Amrita and her team put the back end together in terms of tracking attendance, tracking assignments, giving assignments, because we can't be on Zoom for 10 hours. It'll just wear us all out. So how do we trim it back to 6 hours instead of 8 or 9 hours in classroom assignments, and instead of an hour homework assignment that, on your own individual assignment, how can we beef that up and maybe make it a 2 hour, 2.5 hours per day? Let people know ahead of time. So we did all of that. Frankly, much to my surprise, we offered the 48 people. All right, so this is gonna be a grand experiment. So we let them know this is the first time we're going to try to do this virtually, and half of them signed up for a virtual. And some of them kind of like, I don't know if I've ever learned anything virtually. All right. So these guys are like 48 years old and said, I've never sat in a classroom on, Zoom or any other platform for, 5 days in a row. But what the heck? I trust Amrita. I trust Back to Source team. I trust Peter. And so we launched into it. 5 days later, to the person, every single person was there for every single hour, 6 days a day for 5 days. Every single person did their 2 hour plus assignment, sent it into the back end of Back to Source that was tracking it, because we had to do that from an ICF, rigorous learning standpoint. Were they completing their work offline? 100%. And the same people that we're talking about, I don't know if I can even learn in a virtual setting, said, you know what? I learned more in this 5 days than any other 5-day in-person training that I've ever done in my entire lifetime, quote unquote. And so we started examining that afterwards and say, like, how did that happen? I know I'm a great facilitator and Amrita's a great facilitator, but how is that even possible? Well, when we say that the session's going to start, you can't linger in the lobby having your last cup of tea with somebody that you met that you haven't seen in 15 years. You're back in the room. You are in a group here, and you're actually closer to the person that's next to you right now than you would be if you are in a big circle in a conference room. So it's actually, strangely enough, and this is a shock to me, there's more intimacy here than there might be in a great big conference room that, you see somebody across the circle and it's like, hi, how you doing? But you never talk to them, etc. Breakout rooms are spectacular here. They're on time. When we say that they're over, again, in IST, natural break, or, chat, we're doing an exercise. Yeah, I'll be there in a minute. And it's 10 minutes later, they come up. Here we press a button and everybody's back. So, there's so many things that I have been forced into from a learning standpoint, learning environment standpoint, that has worked out spectacularly well. I mean, more than I could ever have imagined. And we do have the intimacy, we do have the camaraderie, we do have the safe space that we create together that we did in live events. And up until the one that we did virtually last year, I think we started that in what, May of last year, Amrita?
May,
yeah. For 25 and a half years, I had personally been involved with every single 5-day part 1 training that Coach for Life ever did. Okay. And they were all in person. And so now I've done, I don't know, six, I think, for IST friendly time. And I've done 2 or 3 here for USA friendly time. So I've probably done 10 of these already now in the last year and a half. And every single one and every single person has said, wow. Yeah. So that's my experience. And I was forced into it. This was not voluntary.
yeah. But it wasn't voluntary then, but I know that we've shared notes on it, is that it's completely voluntary now to continue to offer it in a virtual format. So
yeah. Amen. Amen to that.
Yeah. So, you know, another thing about this whole virtual training that I just want to share with all of you is that in the batches that I've co-facilitated with Peter, and they may be now 14 or 16, I've lost count of it. There's a program that started last year virtually, still continues to meet every Wednesday in a whole year has passed by. So the connection and the bonding that has happened with those 24 participants, they continue to have that, which an in-person program, I have not seen that happen as much as there has been that best intent, and they've been able to do that virtually. So I'm also, I love meeting people, and the only thing that I've missed in virtual training is just being able to give one warm, loving embrace. Other than that, everything else has been like just perfect and so enriching, even just as a facilitator, as is for the participants. But I'm going to shift back, Peter, to ask another question in terms of this whole thing of coaching and mentoring. And this is a question from Suresh, who's not here, but I'll still ask his question. And he says, how do you ascertain whether an individual requires coaching and mentoring? And a follow-up to that same question is, does the program that we run speak to both those needs as well?
Program specifically focuses on coaching first and foremost. Like 94% we'll be talking about coaching and the competencies of coaching, the practice of coaching, and so on. Mentoring and coaching are probably the closest relatives to each other, as opposed to coaching and training, or coaching and therapy, or coaching and managing, and coaching and parenting, and all lots of other support structures that adults have available to them. The difference between coaching and mentoring is coaching assumes an equal partnership, an equal standing. Mentoring, there is a differential. There's an authoritative differential. Now, sometimes in most classic sense is its age. I've been in this company, I've been in this profession longer than you have, son, right? Junior. So let me mentor you in terms of, here's what you need to know. Here's how you need to show up. Here are the people that you need to understand are important in blank, in this company, in this profession, in this academia, in this whatever. Coaching is on an equal stand. Oh, and mentoring, let me go back to mentoring just for 1 second. The mentoring in terms of authoritative could be also in terms of knowledge. So there's a lot of reverse mentoring happening in the world now, that someone, I'll give you a classic example. There's a guy literally in Mumbai that I got through Fiverr that is a brilliant guy. It has everything to do with this virtual video setup. And I went to him for mentoring. Like, how do you connect OBS to Zoom and then stream it out to Facebook or, YouTube? Here, you do this. Okay, and what about my Elgato Stream Deck? How do I, here's how you do that, right? So he's half teacher, half mentor. So the differential in mentoring is I know more, or I have more experience than you do. Coaching, I do not assume that authoritative position. Even if I'm working with somebody with a that's talking about how do I get my people, how do I inspire my people? How do I be a better delegator? How do I be a better leader? How do I advance and develop my people more rapidly? And while I can talk about that as their coach, I don't. I ask them questions in terms of, so first of all, what do you want to do? And what's the motivation behind it from your standpoint? And I ask questions that hopefully are not leading or directive or authoritative, but more probing in terms of exploring what's the significance of this for you? What have you tried? Who do you know that you admire that you would like to emulate? What are they doing that you may want to try out? So I may approach it from different angles, but never from an authoritative angle and say, well, here, let me just tell you what to do. Now I've just crossed the border, which is unethical as a professional coach. So going back specifically to the question in terms of the training and how much of what we do is there, we explain that kind of like in a little bit deeper thing and kind of, again, a historical standpoint. If I go back 20 years and look at mentoring and coaching, and I look at mentoring and coaching now, and how has the world changed, and therefore how has it changed from a place of mentoring even? Because I love mentors, by the way. I've been a mentor, I've been a mentee. I have huge admiration, and if I were the commandant of the world, I'd have every organization reestablish a formal mentoring program, period. I would. 75% of that mentoring program would bring in coaching competencies and skills, like hardcore, like ICF, hardcore competency, coaching competencies. But there's still a part of mentoring that coaching does not do and will never do. And that is, there's some things that have changed in the world in terms of longevity in a job. So in the days where somebody joined a Tata Group or another huge company, then they were set. They were there for their whole career. That is not the case today. Have you noticed? It's a gig economy. I work here for as long as it serves me, and I learn, and then I'm on. I'll either start my own business, or I'll go work for somebody else at a higher salary, or it's closer to me, or it's more exciting technology, or whatever's going on. So the mentoring that took place in terms of career development is pretty much gone. It's just gone. Coaching has filled that gap and ought to fill that gap in terms of asking that individual, so what are you up to? How do you want to plan your own career? If that's the topic of the day, how are you planning your own career? What's important to you? What are you learning where you're at? What are you not learning where you're at? What are you excited about in terms of things that are happening in your space, in the world, globally? So that is what part has changed. The part that has not changed is being a human being. Human being relationships. Before COVID, one of the key questions in that arena that a mentor might ask is, have you attended, when's the last time you attended your son's sporting event or school event? Have you devoted the amount of time that's necessary to have a healthy relationship with your spouse or not? A mentor knows that that's important and will support you to, take an hour out of your quote busy day and go back and spend it with a family member. Yeah.
And and it always comes up, and we talk so much more about it in the coach training program. But there are just two more questions that I do want to get to. And one is, she's not here again, but she's from Spain, and she's requested that her question really be asked, and from Zobida, Peter. And this one is that how can we bring harmony between a more transformational coaching style, which is what I understand the Coach for Life training module seems to be like, which is in service to the coachee, while still be expected to coach in accordance to the ICF core competencies. So that transformational coaching, and how does it fit into the ICF core competencies as at an ACC, PCC, or MCC level, but how do the two get married is the essence of her question.
Well, transformational coaching, I think, is synonymous with the ICF way of coaching, if you will. Yeah, there are pseudo coaches that call themselves a coach and bulk at ICF competencies or style or structure without understanding that competencies and structure. They said, I don't need ICF. I can just coach. I've been coaching for the last 15 years. Thank you very much. That's way too structured. Okay, and I respect that. They're not meant to be a coach. They're not meant to be a professional coach. They'll continue being a mentor. They'll continue being an advisor. They'll continue being an executive, whatever. I think the very, very essence of professional coaching, and specifically the ICF way of doing coaching or being coaching or structuring coaching, is transformational. The embryo, the genesis of coaching back 26 years ago was that the client is the source of their own best answer. And how do healthy people, responsible people, who do they go to when they need support, when they need a space to figure things out, that will not get advice, that will not be judged? The answer to that was basically nowhere, unless they had a benevolent grandma. Is the closest person that anybody ever shared that said, yeah, my grandma, I came home at 15 with purple hair, and she just started laughing and loving me and told me to come over here and give you a big hug, right? She just loved me for who I was, when I was, where I was. For the rest of us and the rest of the planet, we didn't have any place to go. We couldn't talk to our spouse about it because they had an agenda with us. We couldn't talk to our boss because they definitely had an agenda with us. We couldn't talk to our peers because then they would be judging us, and so on and so forth. So the very essence of coaching from the very get-go, and it is so alive and vibrant today in the ICF coaching competencies and the ethics and standards that we follow, that is literally transformational. So I see no conflict between the two, frankly. Different training programs have different schools of thought in terms of how transformation takes place. So you have ones that are brain-based science, neuroscience coaching. You have transactional coaching that comes in the form of performance coaching or results coaching. You know, how do we make people more productive? How do we transform them from a lazy worker to a more productive worker? All in the stream of consciousness of transforming. For Amrita and I, in the Coach for Life program is, like I said earlier, based on a spiritual principle of we're spiritual beings having a human experience. How can I, here's one of my most favorite quotes. It's mine, by the way. So I'll there's a little spoiler alert on that one. My favorite quote is, true, deep, personal, and lasting transformation is not changing somebody into something they're not, but rather reconnecting them to who they've always been. Okay. Now that, I think, is the essence of transformation at the highest level, is to transform that individual back to their original core self, get them in touch with who they were created to be. When I can do that, and I do that every day in my training, and I do that every day in my coaching, people come alive. It's like they're reintroduced to themselves. I love my life. I mean, I hear that every single day. Wow, I love my life. Now, how many people in the world can say that? As opposed to, I hate my life. I can't wait to get out of here. I can't wait to retire. I can't wait to be the next stage of my life, because then I'll be happier. Well, maybe yes, maybe no. But I can guarantee you that the only place where fulfillment is available, true, deep, personal fulfillment is available, is when you figure out who you are, who you were created to be, and you're actually being that. Does that make life easier? Not necessarily. That's not the promise. But will it be more fulfilling that I am living the life that I was created to live? Yeah. That's my answer to that one.
Thanks, Peter. And you also spoke to that part which is most dear to me, and which was also part of the next question, but which is what makes this work so fulfilling for me, that the connection between spirituality and coaching, the way that I've received it and I continue to offer it. And a large part of the work that I do is within the corporate sector in India. And many people are also from the corporate sector who are looking to become coaches to use back in their organization. And there are some who are looking at this program also from a perspective of saying, how can I just be better at the role that I'm playing in my organization? I may or may not choose to become a coach immediately, but can I still use the, what I learn and, receive in this program to become better in my organization? So in the question, and I'll say it as it is that how will this course help me in the present role if I'm not practicing coaching full time or 100% of the time? So if you can, speak to that, and then we'll open it up for any questions that there are, if there are.
Yes, super. The short answer to that is you become a better human being. And it really is that simple. You become more compassionate with yourself. You start forgiving yourself for things that you haven't done, or you haven't done well, or you messed up on. You grow as a human being. I've had people from the ages of about 19 through, I think, 80, 82 maybe, students. And every single one of them come out of the program with knowing themselves better. They are more at peace with themselves. They have structures and strategies to be a better human being. And guess what? They apply it in wherever they go. They apply it as a dad or a granddad. They apply it as a fellow worker, an executive, as an author, as a nurse. A long time ago, I had one student that was very senior. I mean, senior in terms of age and in profession. She was a neonatal nurse. Okay, so a neonatal nurse works with babies that are premature and are like are like ounces as opposed to pounds when they get born. They are healthy. There's nothing wrong with them, but they are desperate for nutrition and comfort and care to be able to grow. And I met with her like, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 years after she went through training. I said, why did you go through training? You can't talk to these people, you know, the neonate. And she said, Peter, it was one of the most powerful coach training or trainings that I've ever done in my life, in my career, because I have such a deeper way of listening and having compassion for the people that are the family members of this neonate. Mom and dad, siblings, grandparents, nephews, cousins, friends that come behind the glass, right, in the neonatal part of the hospital. So it's being a better human being. It's your listening skills will expand or elevate by a factor of 100%, literally in the first 5 days, guaranteed, guaranteed. I've had so many executives come in and say, you know, I thought I was a good listener, but you know what? If I've learned anything in the last 5 days, I haven't been. And now I aspire to practice my listening more. There are levels of listening, and I'll associate this with the ACC, PCC, MCC kind of levels that have been brought up. ACC level, let's say, I'm going to even say pre-ACC, right? Just the average citizen that comes off the street, that comes into the coach training. I'm going to say that they're listening out of a scale, let's say a scale of 100 is probably down at around an 8. And again, they think they're great listeners, but you know, they don't listen at all, or very little. An ACC level may be listening for 3, 4, 5 different parameters that a client is talking about or doing or saying or energetically going through. A PCC level coach, which is a very advanced level coach in the ICF schema. After training for almost a year of becoming a PCC level coach, they're probably listening at 20 layers of what's happening with the client. At the MCC level, it builds from there. It's maybe they're listening at 50 layers, 70 layers, 80 layers. They're picking up nuances that the PCC level coach is not picking up yet, and certainly not the ACC level. So the benefit of coming and not necessarily wanting to be a coach, yeah, if you want to be a better human being, a more a happier, more fulfilled human being, come to the training. Yeah.
At least all of the people you have been hearing or listening, I leave that choice completely up to them. For the last hour and a half, so I'm just going to open it up to see if anyone has any questions, comments, observations, anything you want to share. Then please feel free to use this time and space to do that.
Yeah, if I may.
Is that
So,
Yes.
so I'll just say that, Amrita, I'm so glad that, you know, I filled up that lead form, as typically it's called, and I got to speak with you when you reached out and called and spoke about the program. And, you know, I've been coach. I got introduced to coaching maybe about 10 or 11 years ago. But, you know, during my time within the corporate world within HR, it used to be more of, you know, what typically the CEO of the company would point me to sometimes, you know, based on what he felt were some needs of some of the, you know, my peers, and hence I ended up doing some coaching for them. And but then it kind of came to a bit of a pause. And then when last maybe 3 to 4 years, I picked it up once again. But more importantly, I've been one of the fans of yours, Peter, because some of my colleagues and friends in the industry who went through, you know, their coach training with you, so they would, you know, talk about it. And I've also had the pleasure and the sheer joy of listening to you during the ICF Delhi chapter. There was a conversation which happened, I think, almost 7-8 months ago. and you were speaking about coaching mindset in that. So my interest is really to further deepen, and I don't know from what to what point really, but I'm looking to do that. And I was sharing with Amrita that, if not now in September, perhaps April, so is when I would take that opportunity. So that is where I am. It's almost like I didn't have to ask any questions, and all my questions were getting answered. So I'm really feeling fulfilled. Just wanted to share that with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Look forward to seeing you in September or April or whenever. And I'll give you also, I referred to doing some live streaming videos every Tuesday, and I've been doing that from the beginning of this year. So I think I've got 30 or 31 or 32 recordings now. And most of those were, at least initial ones, were all ICF related, coaching related. So they're free, they're available. You can look at, I think you look under Peter J. Redding, either on YouTube or on Facebook, you'll find those.
Sure.
And those are free, about an hour each. But it's a deep dive into all of that as a primer for anybody. So
wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you for pointing me to that. Thank you so much, Peter. Thank you, Amrita.
Hi, Amrita. Hi, hello, Peter. I'd like to just say a few words, if I may. Firstly, wonderful. Thank you so much. And firstly, Amrita, thank you for persistently keeping in touch with me over the few months. And we've had some wonderful conversations. Peter, it's great to see you in person. I do believe this is in person. I don't consider this virtual at all. I really feel the energy, and it's wonderful, absolutely, to feel that. It just fits into what I want to do. So I'm so grateful, so happy to be over here. And I don't know if September will happen for me. My daughter is leaving for university, and 16th September is when she leaves the country. I don't know whether I will be able to go with her. It's going to be empty nest for me. So a lot of things happening. But I'm super keen I'll try my best for September, else I'm definitely in. Can't you do one in maybe October, November? So I'll definitely be in for the next, but I'm still keeping my fingers crossed for September. Really looking forward, really looking forward, because this seems to answer so many things that I have been seeking. So yes, just grateful. Thank you.
Great to see your smiling face. Thank you, Mom, for being a parent that's now getting ready to send them off to college. So I look forward to our meeting whenever that happens.
Thank you. Anybody else wants to share or ask? Oh, come on in.
Yeah, so I wanted to share and ask a question. So first of all, I'm really glad I made it to this meeting, because honestly speaking, like my whole day, I'm always on the computer, right? So I'm like, I need a break. I need to stop attending meetings and stuff with like college and with work and everything. But then the moment I signed up for the whole course at Back to Source, I was like, before I go into a course, I should get to know the man who's actually taking the course. I thought maybe if I just I get a glimpse of him today over here. And I'm telling you, it was so worth it. Honestly, this 1.5 hours, I've paid the most attention that I would ever have in any of my classes. So it's crazy. I'm just so glad I made it here. And thank you so much for this. I mean, the energy is just amazing. The way Priya Darshini spoke, too good. Anyways, the question I had was, so I turned 24 days ago. And right now I'm actually en route designing a course, an online course for teenagers to help them get out of video game addiction. Amrita said a few words in the beginning. So my question was that I'm I choose to opt in, like keep coaching as an opt-in as part of my course, because like a lot of times the gamers will want to have like a one-to-one talk to them, like to better what they're feeling, or for me to help them in a more personal way. So I thought of adding coaching as part of my course. But the problem here is that I'm only 20 years old, and like there's this notion, especially in India, where people associate age with being wise and being really knowledgeable. So I'm really confused. I'm really unsure as to will the parents send their child to me because I'm really young, and I don't have that kind of experience behind me, or that kind of stuff. So it's just that I'm just unsure about the situation. Like, should I take up coaching this young? Will I be able to make it big this young? Something like that. So along those lines, if you could just, it's just a thought. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And yeah, I want to definitely encourage you to not hold yourself back because of your age, no matter what everybody else says. You know more about gaming than I will ever know about gaming. Okay. Now, do I know about addiction? Yep. Been there, done that, several different varieties in the course of my lifetime. Gaming happens not to be one of them because it wasn't available to me when I was 20 years old. But I would encourage you to own your own power. In coaching, one of the things that you're going to learn is you're not there to give them advice. You're not there to say, okay, so here's been my strategy. But because I have been impacted, because I've been impacted by gaming addiction, or I've been around it, I know I've been there long enough to have a huge compassion and be able to support you and ask you the kind of questions that somebody that's 30 years old would never be able to ask, because they're too old, frankly. So age works against people that are looking to support individuals with a gaming addiction. So here's where the two worlds meet. Yes, there's all kinds of expertise that I bring to the table as a human being across from my client. But as a professional coach, I am there to create what I call a sacred space or a safe space for them to do the work that they're ready to do. So you can't force someone to say, okay, so you have to give up addiction to gaming today. That's not going to work. And that's probably what parents have done in the terms of their reaction to that, and say, okay, I am going to separate you from computer, and then they will find another way to do it on their phone, or they'll find another device, or they'll find a friend, or they'll find a cafe, or they'll find, because they have to have that fix. As a coach, you're going to create a space for them and say, look at me. I'm a whole lot like you. Age-wise, culture-wise, ethnic-wise, gender-wise. Doesn't have to be, but people are going to attract people that are kind of like themselves. We call that an affinity group. And then you're going to support them if they are ready, willing, and able to do something different, to take responsibility for changing their life. And that's tough work. That is tough work at any age, about any topic, and especially around addiction, because that has been their comfort. That's where they feel safe. That's where they feel that they can just be themselves. And to do that work takes, again, to be a proper coaching client, do you take responsibility for your own life on a scale of 1 to 10? Or not? 1 is, nope, I am, because this is, from my upbringing, my parents made me this way, my teachers made me this way, my environment makes me this way. I take no responsibility for any of that. Then they're not a proper, you can't coach that individual, because the first session you're going to say, so what do you want to do about it? And if they say, I can't do anything about it, then the coaching is complete. Thank you very much. We're done. But the person that comes to you, and it might be instigated by the parent, I get that, especially if they're underage, you're gonna need their permission to do coaching with that individual. But then you're going to have a conversation with the person that you're actually going to coach, that's 17 years old or 15 years old or 18 years old or whatever their age they are, or 22 years old, doesn't matter, 25. And you're going to ask them that same question. So are you ready to do something about this addiction? And I've done a lot of work in 12-step, if you're familiar with 12-step work, where, it's addicts that come together that start taking more responsibility for their life. But the only thing I would caution you or anybody else in terms of, don't try to change somebody that you need to change, or their parents need to change, or their spouse says, I don't need coaching, but my husband definitely needs coaching. Peter, can you work with him? I'll say no. Until he calls me. When he's ready, have him give me a call. So it may be initiated by the parent, but I would again caution you in terms of it. The parent, you're not going to be coaching the parent, nor are you going to be sharing with the parent what's going on in a coaching session. By the way, that's a confidentiality piece that is sacrosanct in coaching. So the parent's going to say, "Well, is she making progress?" And you can't say, you can say, we met when we were supposed to meet and we spent an hour together. Period. Because if you divulge the confidentiality of what's going on inside that session, then you've just destroyed your capacity to be their coach. Because he or she or they, in terms of how they identify with themselves, they're not going to share anything other than topical. They can't go deep. They can't be vulnerable. They can't cry. They can't yell and scream. They can't divulge what's really going on inside of them. So that's a long answer to a short question. Does that, and what did you hear in that? I'm curious as to what you heard in that.
Yeah, so actually, I've reflected a lot, because the whole way I've been looking at it is a way in which I can help them, get rid of the addiction the way I did. But now, like, the whole point of view is going to switch, right? It's like you need to help them realize themselves what they can do to help them get out of it. So yeah, so that's what I got from this 1.5 hours. Yeah, I'm really grateful. Thank you.
Okay, so you graduated. You don't even have to come to training. That's coaching right there.
Yeah.
Well done. Well done. Look forward to seeing you.
Me too. Thank you.
So we had a Q&A session, and you also got to witness some coaching in the whole thing, thanks to Vedant and Peter and Vedant's question. But thank you. That I'm just, if Peter, you have any closing comments to make, because I'm conscious of time and we're at the top of the hour. So if there's anything that you'd like to share in closing, and if not, always hugely grateful for your presence today.
Thank you.
Ever.
Yeah, thank you so much. Briefly, I'll just say thank you for the opportunity to share about coaching. I love talking about coaching, as you can tell. My closing comment is this, is that the world frankly needs more professional coaches. The world doesn't need more coaching or coaches that are calling themselves a coach without training, but the world needs more professional coaches that understand the power of what a professional coach does, the space they provide to an individual to develop themselves, get clarity, have a greater sense of fulfillment. And I love 2021. I love my life in 2021. I love the technology in 2021. I love the challenges that the planet is up to right now. And we can solve these, and we can provide those of us that are guided to be a professional coach to support our part of the world. So thank you. Thank you for being on my planet.
Thank you, Peter. And I'll say in the same tune as Peter, I love 2019, I love 2021, I love 2022, and I just love doing this work. So whenever you feel ready, to join us in this most amazing and fulfilling work that we offer for others, but as fulfilling and honoring to us as individuals. You're always welcome, and we'll be waiting for you when you're ready. So thank you and good night, and
Thank you.
hope to see you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Back to
you. Good
source.
night.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank
Good night.
you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Namaste.
Bye, Peter.
Hi, everyone.
Bye.